Could have been much worse. Home inspectors discovered Amanda's landlord tried to duct tape this valve. And any self-respecting home inspector knows a carbon monoxide leak is not a do-it-yourself project. Springfield Cloud Study will be done in December to assess the percentage of minorities moving into Springfield and attending Missouri State University. In Springfield, Missouri, I'm Bryant Clerkley with Ozarks News Journal. As a medic, Neil Harrington says that PTSD was at its worst during his deployment in 2006 and 2007. I took a deep look inside how diversity can affect local business and how Missouri State University is using cloud studies to determine the rate of minorities staying in the Springfield area after college. I spoke with the Vice President of Diversity and Inclusion, Juan Mraz, and he explained how the city is evolving. Amanda Polt goes to Missouri State University. She's a junior who lives here, in this home built in the 1920s. She moved in last summer, and it wasn't long before she and her roommates started feeling sick.
One of my roommates over the summer, she lived in our back bedroom, and she started noticing before she went to bed that she would have really bad headaches. And that's weird for her, like she's never really had headaches before.
A call to city utilities led to this discovery. A faulty furnace. Dangerous carbon monoxide gas was leaking.
City utilities red flagged our house.
It could have been much worse. Home inspectors discovered Amanda's landlord tried to duct tape this valve. And any self-respecting home inspector knows a carbon monoxide leak is not a do-it-yourself project.
I will not be corrected by just taping it. It's being caused by cracked heat exchanger, the exhaust getting into the delivery. So you need to have an HVAC guy come out there.
There are other safety concerns when living in an older home. The effects of potential mold and asbestos need to be considered. Bottom line, don't just let it go.
Walk into a house and you smell mold, it smells musty, you got a problem. Asbestos itself is not a horrible problem. It's when it gets in the air. It's what they call friable. The little particles get in the air and you breathe it for long periods of time.
The key? Was your home built before 1950? If it was, a professional home inspector is money well spent. They'll inspect your house for hazards that could be dangerous or even deadly. In Springfield, Missouri, I'm Bryant Clerkley, Ozarks News Journal. According to the Department of Veteran Affairs, PTSD affects 11 to 20% of veterans that served in the Iraq and Afghanistan war. Neil Harrington, who does not suffer from PTSD, was in the Air Force from 2004 to 2010. He was deployed to Iraq to work on combat medicine for 3 years.
Yeah, post-traumatic stress was very common, especially in my deployment in 2007. I say closer to 80% of our patients had mental health from post-traumatic stress, and a main cause of that, from what I found, a lot of people were losing their friends that were their battle buddies, their best friends from back home.
During his time in Iraq, Harrington saw the trauma soldiers experienced and started to notice just how many of his patients were affected by PTSD. As a medic, Neil Harrington says that PTSD was at its worst during his deployment in 2006 and 2007. Some symptoms of PTSD are not easily seen in soldiers until days before they're diagnosed.
My experience, it's really the change in behavior, because a lot of times people before post-traumatic stress will be happy-go-lucky or even chill depending on their personality, and the personalities will change. Things like even a noise like a bang or like something on the radio will cause them to freak out. Just little things before. High anxiety.
As a medic, Neil Harrington has his own opinions on how PTSD is handled within the United States once our veterans return home.
A lot of people view any illness, if you have cancer, if you have some sort of physical, trauma, people have sympathy, but when it comes to the mind, it's almost forgotten. Like, people don't know how to deal with mental issues. The thing that would really help is getting not only treatment and evaluations for the person dealing with post-traumatic stress, but having families that need help dealing with a person that's come back, and that's been a really big issue.
The National Center for PTSD says that sexual trauma within the military is another large cause of PTSD. In Springfield, Missouri, I'm Bryant Clerkley with Ozarks News Journal.
Is this a big issue around colleges where people are renting out older houses?
Well, yeah, older houses are usually cheap, and around colleges, they're close, so students can walk. And usually houses that were built before 1950 have problems with mold, asbestos, and carbon monoxide, unfortunately.
And how long have you been chasing tornadoes?
Well, Brian, I've been chasing tornadoes about 10 years. I decided that the technology was right and the time was right, so I decided, I'm going to go out and chase storms back in 2004, and that actually worked out really well because for 3 weekends in a row, I saw tornadoes 3 times in a row, which for a rookie storm chaser was pretty good.
And what states did you chase tornadoes in?
Yeah, you would think it would. The first answer would be Oklahoma and Kansas, but on those first chases, I actually went as far as Nebraska.
Wow.
And saw a pretty good tornado. And then the last time, 10 years ago, I went to Kansas, and one thunderstorm produced multiple tornadoes. And again, for a rookie, my jaw was just open, my mouth was just wide open, just like, wow, I should hang it up after this. It's not going to get any better.
And what states have the strongest tornadoes that you've discovered?
Well, now, strong tornadoes, the EF4s and 5s, when you look at that, they can actually occur almost up to Canada, all the way down to the Gulf Coast, into the east. They stop at the Rockies usually for the very strongest tornadoes. But if you talk about tornado frequency, if you look at the entire planet, Oklahoma owns it. There is no place in the world where the tornadoes are more frequent than Oklahoma, with Texas, Kansas, even parts of Nebraska a very close second.
And is there a difference between Midwestern tornadoes and Southern tornadoes with the time that they occur?
Yeah, and there's been some appreciation lately for how severe southern tornado outbreaks can be. The thing about a southern tornado outbreak, and what we're talking about there is, Mississippi, Alabama, even Florida, maybe Georgia, is that those thunderstorms that produce the tornadoes there are not necessarily driven by the heat of the day like you might think. They're pretty much a 24/7 operation. So a lot of the horrific tornadoes that have occurred there can happen at daybreak, for instance, different times of day, overnight, and so that's what makes those tornadoes kind of insidious in some ways. People are not necessarily ready for it at those times.
And if someone wanted to get into storm chasing, how would they do that? A regular civilian?
That's right. And when I go out and storm chase, it's kind of funny because we see a lot of chasers out there now, and with the technology like this, a smartphone, it's very easy to get a radar picture. It's portable. You don't have to have a lot of equipment anymore. But the problem is a lot of people who never thought about chasing before will just wake up one day, see a tornado warning, and then get in their car and go. Well, if you can imagine hundreds of people doing that, then the storm chasing field gets kind of crowded. And even from 10 years ago, I remember just a few guys getting in the way, making crazy U-turns. Now you go out, and I know some very well-known storm chasers who actually will avoid the big storm because they don't want to deal with the people anymore. Wow. So my advice would be, if you're thinking about doing it, I wouldn't approach it in a casual way, even though it seems tempting to do that, because there are some things you need to know about how thunderstorms develop that may get you in trouble out in the field.
And what is the scariest situation that you've ever encountered when chasing these tornadoes?
Well, Bryant, this might surprise you, and people ask me this all the time. They say, are you afraid of the tornado? Are you scared during that? And I have to say, never.